Welcome to another episode of Grief Heals, the podcast where we explore how it is that grief heals us with our relationship with ourselves, with one another, and our whole wide world. I am your host, Lisa Michelle Zega, and I am excited to have another conversation. Oh, welcome. I started the podcast, so I thought, but I hadn't hit record. So, welcome. Welcome to an episode of Grief Heals. If you will, just take a breath with me. Let yourself arrive wherever you are, however you are, exactly as you are. So maybe taking a moment to notice, wow, how am I? How am I in this moment? I am well. I am well. I feel settled. I feel grounded and grateful to be here. And that is not how I woke up this morning. I woke up like, on the one hand, it felt like a weight was bearing down on my chest. I felt heavy. On the other hand, I felt somewhat numb, I'm gonna say, like disconnected. I I felt disoriented, not really knowing where or how to start my day. So I decided to just walk silently and become aware of myself and notice whatever came up, right? And I was reflecting. I was only, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes into my walk, reflecting on how I had woken up with such a heaviness in me. And I came across a neighbor, Tyler, who is the pet owner of Blue, a miniature Aussie, and my dog is Bella Blue, and Blue and Bella Blue are buddies, and they started playing, and Tyler and I started talking, and I was just reflecting on watching When They See Us with my husband. We were watching the mini series about the Exonerated Five, and I'd seen it a couple years ago, and then let's see, a few weeks ago, I actually got to meet Yusuf Salam because he was the main speaker at an event that I was leading a workshop at. And then I talked about him a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. And since then, I kept having this sense of like, say their names, because I mentioned Yusuf Salam by name, but I did not mention Kevin Richardson. I did not mention Antron McCray. I did not say Raymond Santana or Corey Wise. So I watched this mini series with my husband, and at one time, he was actually a what did they call it? Corrections officer. A guard essentially at a prison. Watching this with him was especially painful, I'm gonna say. I feel like there is this desire and assumption that we have that our legal system is just, and that we want to believe that. And in believing that, we believe that our rights are upheld and that grave injustices cannot like happen to us. Whew. My mind and brain and heart is going in so many directions. I mean, one of the things I recognized when I went through a divorce after 23 years of marriage, I remember coming away and thinking, oh, the person with the most resource wins. That was sort of my takeaway. like the human element, that whatever is actually going on with a person is sort of irrelevant in a court of law. That was my experience. Very, very different kind of legal case. Um, I just got done reading Yusuf Salam's book, Better, Not Bitter. I highly recommend it. I'm actually in my second reading of it now. And I get to work with a lot of people that are seeking to exit the prison system, that are still on parole and are getting a work opportunity through Goodwill. And I want to order the book and as an offering for the people who might be interested in reading it. That's one of the things on my heart. And then also, I think I mentioned, I want to say it was called Street Life. Oh God, Gangs something to PhD. Victor Victor Rios. Oh boy. Anyway, that's another one that I think would be really, really helpful to the people that I get to come alongside. Wow, I think I already need to just slow down and take another breath. So, watching this show with my hubby was sort of painful, because what it felt like is things we want to believe and are conditioned to believe, and things we've become hardened to, like hearing there was a scene where Corey Wise is incarcerated. He is in the adult facility, and he gets jumped, and a guard basically like sets him up for that and turns a blind eye. And I don't remember the comment that my hubby said, but something like learning the ropes, or not. I just was mad, really mad and sad. Like it just felt so disconnected to humanity. And one of the things too is the way that we dehumanize anyone that we get to label or call a criminal. It's like them we get to treat them like they're not people. And the whole idea of putting people in cages and justifying that, like that is just difficult to swallow, to stomach. And what's funny is not funny, not haha, but I'm recognizing is that what I just absorbed, that like that was normal, and it didn't trouble me. It didn't keep me up at night. It didn't have me waking up with a heavy heart. And so many of the things that I have ingested as normal that are absolutely not normal. And then today I read a post by a friend of mine who's talking about rescuing animals that have been abused, and talking about all these things that happen to animals that are mistreated. And I was reading it going, oh my gosh, like it sounds like you are describing what happens to people in the prison industrial complex. And the disconnect with all of that. I keep thinking about how grief, like entering my own grief, has allowed me and continues to invite me to enter humanity, to enter my humanity and the humanity of others. So, anyway, here I am taking Bella Blue on a walk. We run into Tyler and Blue. Did I already say this? The miniature Aussie. And they start playing together, and Tyler and I start talking. And I just ended up sharing with him of like, hey, my heart is so heavy. And I didn't even realize how heavy until I heard myself like just so much coming up and out, so much unease. And thankfully, I didn't know this at the time, but he had the capacity to hold what I was sharing and to empathize and to come alongside. And and anyway, then he and I ended up having this most incredible time, and our dogs played together, and we had such soul enriching, life giving conversation about humanity and connectedness and living beings and being connected, and his grief and my grief, and just this, it was just so beautiful. And at the end, I was like, wow, love is so big. Like that love is big enough to hold not just our suffering, not just our loss, um, the loss of our idealism, the loss of how, well, I'll just speak for myself, the loss of how I thought things were, the loss of the American dream, the loss of what I thought that my country was built on, and then recognizing systems of oppression that are that way by design. And yeah, it's just painful. And then at the same time, having this conversation with Tyler was so life-giving and enriching and gave me so much hope. And then also thinking about Yusuf and Corey and Raymond and Kevin and Antron and all these ways that you would think their humanity would almost be wrung out of them. So much suffering, so much unjust suffering. And yet, their connection to giving back and to bringing freedom for all and investing in their own families, and yet these scars too of what it's like to be treated like an animal, to be institutionalized like that, and to have that worked and massaged into your psyche, especially when it is coming from historical oppression where you've been othered in some kind of way your whole life. Um, I'm letting myself talk just like a human. I mean, just like it's obvious. It's like I'm human, right? But no, I mean with my mistakes, with my misspeaks, with like getting it wrong. I put that in air quotes because on the one hand, it's like, well, how can you get your own human expression wrong, right? These are the ways these things are impacting me this morning. I'm feeling like on the verge of tears, and I'm also feeling like this hope in my heart, this light, beauty. There's a poem that I've come to love. It's called Adrift by Mark Nepo, and it begins with everything is beautiful and I am so sad. And it ends with I am so sad and everything is beautiful. And just thinking about how our lives are woven together and how we're woven together. Oh, you know what so it was really, really troubling me. Like, do you ever have that sense of, I just kept hearing a refrain in my brain, and it was say their names, say their names, say their names. It was really like bothering me so much that I had not said the names of those who And there's another name, uh, Trisha Miley. Miley, I'm not sure if that's how I say her last name. Anyway, she was the one who was brutally beaten and raped in Central Park. Hmm. And then I was really troubled because Donald Trump, he had taken out a full page article in 1989. $89,000 he paid to have this article aired, and basically calling for a return of the death penalty. And in the article, he spoke about how he would always have anger and hate in his heart for people that do violence to others, and just let that sit, right? And that's really what I think, is that when we don't enter our own grief, our hearts are hardened. I don't think we also know what we're capable of. I mean, I don't think that uh, let's just say soldiers in Germany under the Nazi regime, I don't think they would have thought that they were capable prior to that of doing and witnessing the atrocities that they did. Um, Not unlike those in was it the Stanford experiment? Um, I don't think that those students would have thought that being put in a position of power when they conducted the study, right, where they divided the students, some were to be prisoners, some were to be prison guards, and they actually had to halt that study very early in. And the psychological repercussions for those who participated uh, had a long lasting impact. And this was, like a mock study. um, and the things that the violence committed against our fellow humans. And one of the things I remember listening to Jordan Peterson talk about reading Stolzhenitsky. Did I say that name right? Um, and I've really been struck for several years now that there is nothing that I'm not capable of. There's no evil that is beyond me. Put in the right circumstances, deprivation. What I don't even know. I don't even know what it would take. I would love to believe that I couldn't harm people in that kind of way, and yet, when I look at history, I just don't think I am separate from others. And I do think that love is the answer. And sometimes when I say that, it sounds naive. And yet, I have seen, witnessed, read about the most magical, incredible, mysterious ways that people forgive one another and work alongside one another. And even my own heart, like, I don't have malice in my heart, even for people that have harmed me. And I don't have malice in my heart for harming others either. And I haven't always been able to say that. But I will say grief has taken me by the hand. I love grief. I love grief because grief responds to loss with love. And grief says that I matter and you matter and suffering matters, and that we get to do this thing together. Grief really speaks about solidarity. At least that's the way that I understand it. And grief makes meaning for me. It I mean, it means the meaning it makes, I guess, is that we matter, that we've always mattered. We matter collectively, we matter individually, that our suffering is connected, that my suffering is yours and my joy is yours, and vice versa. And I don't know, it's a mystery. It is a mystery. I recognize that I have gone in some big, beautiful, broad, open field, tangly vine kind of directions. And I love it. I love it. And I trust that you and your heart and your brain and your whole, like you are an intricate, complicated, beautiful human. And so I just think that you can go in big, bold, beautiful, complicated places with me. And yeah. So I also have a group called Human Solidarity that I started with my dear friend Rachel. And we are going to be taking a course through justified anger. I feel like there's something else that anyway, I'm going to put a link. We're going to take the course through them, exploring the history of slavery and oppression and the way these things live on in our culture today. And we are also reading some different books together. And yeah, have a group that I just wanted to share, because here's what's weird. I never thought that I would be really wanting to learn about and bring down the prison industrial complex and recognize the inhumanity and care about my fellow people in the way that I do now. And not just people, I mean trees, birds, bugs, all of it. Like I care. I didn't even know this was a path for me, and grief led me here. I could also say love led me here. Grief led me to love. I I don't know, like if grief and love live on a circle and they're constantly meeting and kissing and dancing and making love. I mean, it feels like they're one, and yet I can look at them differently and I can look at them together. And I don't know, this is how I came to the conclusion, or I do know and I don't know, the conclusion that grief is love. So I'm gonna go ahead and end there. It feels like an open ending. It doesn't feel all sewn up. And isn't that how so much of life is, where the story is continued? And yeah, so if you are willing, just take a breath with me, like breathing in and out. We're all breathing together, and our life is being breathed. Oh, I will share that when I walked home, having spent time with Tyler and Blue, and um, I just had the sense that my life is being breathed. I am being breathed. I am loved. Like I went on the walk this morning, not starting with my normal routine because I just felt empty. And I couldn't have led myself to the experience that I received. And sometimes we encounter our lives in such a way that we recognize, oh, I am loved and I am being breathed. And so maybe we'll take a last breath together in the recognition that together we are being breathed. And I do recommend Better, Not Bitter, Yusuf Salaam. His book is so beautiful. And one of the things that he talks about in his own mystical experience is that God was conspiring for him, not against him, in all of those struggles, even though he wouldn't say it in the way of like God did that to him. And hearing in his own words. In fact, I listened to the book and it's read in his voice. I cannot recommend enough Better Not Bitter by Yusuf Salam. And yeah, I'll see you next week. We'll pick up the discussion and we will together see where it goes. Goodbye.
You've been listening to Grief Heals with Lisa Michelle Zega. The podcast is produced by me, Eric Simpson, in association with Jump Up and Down Productions. Music by Candelian, Drunken Nights to Sunday Mornings, and Stefan Carlin, A Calming Ocean, A Common Notion. If you would like more information about the work Lisa does, point your browsers to legityou.com. That's LEGITYOU. Lisa can also be reached at lisamichelle@legityou.com. This has been a Jump Up and Down production.